Hi, I'm Marie Elizabeth Molly, and this is Relationship Alchemy. Today, we're going to be talking about the alchemy of food and relationships with my guest, Angelique Santana. Angelique is the owner and founder of Eat with Angelique, the small business she launched with a singular mission in mind: to guide people toward a healthy lifestyle, starting but not ending with the food they eat. Angelique is a speaker, a coach, an author, and a chef. After graduating from the College of New Jersey, Angelique spent 15 years working in the fitness industry for leaders such as Bally Total Fitness and Equinox. In 2012, she earned her Integrative Nutrition Health Coach certification from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. And halfway through the program, she went vegan for 28 days and lost 25 pounds. This experience, combined with Angelique's newfound passion for preparing cooked and raw vegan foods, inspired her to start her own business as a personal chef, transforming lives through food, one bite at a time. Welcome, Angelique.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I love your story, and I want you to expand a bit that connection between what transformed for you as you shifted how you ate and how that inspired your whole new business.
Absolutely. So like you read, for 28 days, I went vegan and I lost 25 pounds. And having been in the fitness industry and being an athlete, I never really had to worry about what I consumed or how active I was. I was always in pretty good shape. And that was the first time that I realized that I really needed to change something about the way I was eating and moving or not moving. And so halfway through that program, I had already been introduced to a chef named Matthew Kenny. And he's a raw food chef, vegan.
Oh yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah. And I had his book. It's Everyday Raw Express. And so I used that book as my guide. And so I basically, for 28 days, changed my diet completely. I lost 25 pounds. And when I went back to eating the way that I was before, food didn't taste the same to me. And so that changed my relationship then with food and with myself. And little by little, I just started eliminating things, eliminating animal products. So first thing was red meat, and then the last was chicken. And then like 2 years later, I gave up eggs and cheese and went totally vegan.
Wow. I love how you did that so mindfully. It sounds like you did that very, sequentially, and also kind of how you felt.
Exactly. It was definitely something that was intuitive to me, and like mindful and conscious. And yeah.
That's so great. I want to talk about your cookbook because I love the title. Would you say the title for our audience?
Yes. The title is Food is Love. There are no rules in food and love.
So would you unpack that a bit for me? Because I'd love to know what you mean by that.
Sure. So for me, it was about all the rules that we have about food, especially like different dietary theories. There are so many different diets out there. The diet industry is like $1 billion industry. And so I wanted to convey that there are no rules, right? We get to make our own rules about the food that we eat and the life that we live. And so we already live by so many different rules. And especially when it comes to food, you want to feel good before, during, and after you eat. And so I thought, the book really tells the story about how I got to where I am today, right? How I became a chef. But it also tells the story about the clients that I served. So the book is not traditional at all. So here, a little bit more about the title, about the no rules. My book size is not standard. So the distribution that it gets, I self-published on Amazon, is not normal or traditional, right? And we don't fit into a box. We just fit wherever we want. And so I just wanted to talk about how we express love through food to ourselves, to our families,
Yeah.
to our friends or just, other people, and then to ourselves. So the book is also not written traditionally. It's broken down into 4 parts: love of self, love of family, love of each other, and all of my love. And so it's not categorized by, appetizers, desserts, main, entrees and things like that. It's just kind of a little bit all over the place, but not.
That is gorgeous. I love how you broke that down between self, family, the multiple loves that we can express through food. What a different orientation, and like, I'm so inspired by what you said too, around how food can be this way we express love to ourselves and to our loved ones. Because it definitely feels like, with all the different diets and all the pressure that exists to look a certain way, that I don't know many people that actually interact with food in that way. That because to me, so much of our relationship with food feels punitive, and it feels like guilty, right? Guilty pleasures, or it feels, it's kind of shameful, right? To like certain foods. I know I shouldn't eat this, but, right? And so to just completely redefine that and move from love is pretty groundbreaking.
Thank you.
Yeah. So how did you come to that? Like, how did that reveal itself to you?
That's just such a great question. I was literally in a mastermind and I was working on my business, and I had gotten to a point where I completed the goal of where I wanted to be. And so my coach was like, okay, what's next? I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, I think it's time to write a book. I was like, okay. And we would eat dinner together, all the women in the mastermind, because it was in the evening. And so we're sitting around and eating, and now we're talking about this book and what do I want? And I literally just had mentioned that, food, if you think about it, is an expression of love. And mostly we think, not, I say we because most of us are really great at serving other people. And so cooking and taking care of someone is a definite expression of love. And like you said, though, our relationship with ourselves and showing ourselves the same love is a lot harder for us. And I actually start the book with love of self first, because we usually do leave ourselves for last.
Well, and that's so brilliant, because I start relationship work there too.
Awesome.
Right? Because how do you teach someone to love you, how best to love you, if you don't know how to love yourself? Right?
Yeah.
And so we walk around sort of trying to have other people give us the love we need, but we don't even know how to display what that might feel or look like.
Yeah, absolutely. So then I started dissecting each client that I had and saying, okay, so then it just naturally worked out that when I first started my business, I was cooking for singles. So that's how love of self came up. That, like, I titled the single people love of self. And then obviously I started cooking for families. I mean, and this is in the exact order that my business grew. Love of self. Then I started cooking for families. Then I started cooking for retreats. So that's the love of each other. And, birthday parties, date night, graduations, so that's love of each other. And then, of course, I saved myself for last and kind of talked about me and my expression of love through food. And
that's gorgeous. I'd love to talk about how food plays out in relationships in a couple of ways. The first way is, what do you do, or how do you work? Let's say you're cooking for a family. How do you work with people who eat different things? Like, I'm gluten allergic. Like, it's not a fad with me. I was actually diagnosed in 2008 when there weren't a lot of options, and I had to just learn how to cook without it. And my partner loves glutinous things. He's a big fan. but he's allergic to chocolate, which is great because that's one of my favorite food groups. So we never fight over dessert because he gets all the, the cake and the things, and I get all the cookie. I mean, the chocolate bars and the gluten-free cookie and things like that. So, so with us, it works great. But how do you navigate a couple or a family who eat really differently? How do you make connection there?
Yeah. I mean, part of my intake is asking those questions. I want to know what your likes and dislikes are, what your aversions are, like what flavor profiles do you definitely not want? And then, of course, any food allergies or sensitivities. And then you can pick from the menu. It's not even broken down by gluten-free or not gluten-free. Once I know that, that's my job to make sure that there's none of what you do not want in the food that I prepare. So it's pretty simple.
And do you ever end up sort of facilitating conversations between partners who have really different philosophical views about food? For example, I was a vegan for 7 years in my 20s, and I was really militant about it. And so if I was with somebody that was a meat eater, like that was a thing.
Yeah.
And now I eat everything, I'm much more flexible except the gluten piece.
Right.
And so I don't have that kind of militancy that I used to have. Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering if when you encounter that in a couple that they might literally be fighting about what to eat, how do you resolve that or help them see that food is love?
Yeah, thankfully I don't have to deal with that. A lot of times, like a partner will share the menu with the partner. And so they may go off, they may review the menu together and decide, or they may review it separately and then decide. And so luckily, they have been very fair and generous with each other where they just kind of meet somewhere in the middle.
Oh, that's great. That's probably partly a function of the vibe you bring too, right? Like if you didn't bring this, like food is love and it's an expression of love kind of energy into the mix, maybe it wouldn't go as easily.
Yeah.
I wonder.
And then like they know I'm coming back the week after, so they could just change it up.
They can change it up. They can revise it. They can say, this was great. Not so much for that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
The other question that around food and relationship that occurs to me, and I'm wondering if you've noticed this, is how different people's relationships are to the kitchen. In other words, and I'll say from a personal perspective, I grew up with a mother who did the cooking for the family. It was a very traditional situation. My father went to work, and by the time I was 7 or so, she stopped working and she made all the dinners, all the breakfasts. Like I was very lucky in that way. And at the same time, when I got older and I actually got curious about cooking, she didn't want me in the kitchen. She that was her time. She didn't want to be distracted. She didn't want to teach. And so I learned to cook when I lived in Taiwan from my Chinese roommate. So for years, all I knew how to do was Chinese food. But, I didn't learn how to cook till I was 21 and living in Taiwan. So I'm curious. And it's funny because Patrick now in my current life, he does a lot of the cooking. He really enjoys it. He's great at it. I'm happy to cede it to him because I'm building my business. However, if I do want to cook with him, he can get a little bit like there's too many people in the kitchen too. Right. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm manifesting my mother. But not really, but just in that one domain.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, have you ever had to navigate people's different kitchen styles? How do you help people with that? Or like, how do you just get people more on the same page?
Yeah. I think there's definitely always like one person who really manages the kitchen, and it usually is the person who does most of the cooking. However, I have worked with people, like I'll going to their homes and literally like we just empty every cabinet and I make it more functional, so we just kind of rearrange things. Like if you have a lot of stuff in a cabinet that's easily accessible, but you don't use anything in it, then we put it higher. or in a place, so we like either get new equipment that you might need, get rid of stuff that you don't need. Some people don't like things on the counter. Some people do. And, especially like when you're changing your diet or creating new habits, it's better to have the things that you're going to be using daily or most often, either in a cabinet that's easily accessible or literally on the counter. It doesn't have to be like all over the place. We might make it like nice and neat and compact, but it's like having a coffee bar, but now you have like your juicer and your blender and the rice cooker or something like that. So,
yeah.
So, I've been hired to do that like specifically, or if I'm cooking for you every single week, what naturally occurs is that I do rearrange things. I rearrange
because you're cooking in the home. You're not bringing it already made, right? You're cooking there.
Exactly. I'm cooking in the home. And also, I the same thing happens in the refrigerator. It happens in the pantry. The pots and pans if I need to do anything in there, but most of the time those things like the plates and cups and whatever are already organized. But yeah, pantry for sure, refrigerator, freezer. Like I start to go through everything because something else that I do is I like to look at what you already have, because then I can make suggestions based off of what you already have in the house and take an inventory so that I know what kind of things I might need to buy to make the things that you chose from the menu. So
that's great.
It just happens that way.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So I want to return to this idea of food as love. And if somebody wanted to start with love of self and food first, what would be the first step that you'd suggest?
So I have this motto, this little saying, and it's there's nothing more important than you. And I like people to kind of start there. And I know we've all heard the term or the phrase being taking care of yourself. Being is not selfish, right? It's selfless, right? If you don't take care of yourself first, then you're not able to take care of everyone else. And so I think that you have to make a real connection with the fact that you are worthy and you do deserve this. And then just kind of connecting with knowing that, or understanding that you do know what's best for you. So, even in couples, like you said earlier, we don't eat the same, right? Especially if you're in a male-female relationship, women just do not and are just, they just don't eat as much as men do. I find that with my brother, if we're eating together and I'm I can't eat anymore, and he's still hungry. I'm I don't even know where you put it.
Where do you put it?
Yeah. So, just knowing that you're uniquely you, and that you are allowed, right? But to feed yourself what makes you feel at your best. And so I just say start with you, literally, like you were saying with your clients.
Yeah, start with you. And I heard you say really embracing the idea of I matter, because I wonder, I don't know if does this happen as much in queer couples where there's a difference in who eats how much. Is the person who would normally eat less trying to finish everything on their plate because the other partner put too much on it? That sometimes happens with us. And I've had to train him because I happen to be in a relationship with a man.
Yeah.
I've had to train him to put less on my plate from the get-go because I was trained so heavily as a child to finish everything on my plate. I will stuff myself because I find it difficult to waste food.
Right. Yeah, I think it just comes down to communication, right? If you're in a relationship with someone, and it doesn't matter if it's a friendship or romantic, just knowing each other and you yourself being able to say you did, I just need a lot less food because the food's not going anywhere. You can always get up and get seconds. So I think it is always a great idea to start off smaller than larger. and know that you can go back for more.
That's such a good point, because I think part of it too, oh, my camera is fuzzy. Part of it too, like at one point I started trying to just use a salad plate instead of a dinner plate.
Yeah.
Because the tendency is to fill the dinner plate because it's a whole plate.
Right.
You know? And by filling a salad plate, I still got to take, quote unquote, a full plate of food, but it was the amount that was actually right for me.
Right. And that's a good point too, using a smaller bowl or a smaller plates.
Yeah. Yeah. I would think that would be key.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, I ask all my guests this, is there a book that's been particularly helpful and important to you in your development, either as a chef or a relational being or just a person? Do you have a favorite book like that might be helpful for folks to know about?
The Surrender Experiment by Michael A. Singer was a pivotal book that I read. I think it was like in 2017. And I mean, the essence of it, as you can guess, right, is to surrender, which I think is such a great word. And it's just that for me, why it was so important was because I felt like I had to control all these things, like control myself, just this idea of like perfection. And so it was really nice to see that you're really not in control. As much as you think you are, you're not, or at least that's what I got from it. And it has been true. I think I went through a very difficult breakup in 2012. And at that time, I felt that I had no faith whatsoever. Like I had lost faith. And that happened probably before the relationship ended. Like I just had this, and after it ended and I was on my own, I little by little was like, it has to be better than this. Like life has to be better than what it is right now. And I started to find my faith again. And so I think that book came at a really great time when I had already found my faith again and ended the relationship, changed careers, and so many things happened. And where I am today is not, if you would have asked me, 10 years ago where I thought I'd be in 5 years, this definitely wouldn't be on the radar.
Wow, that is so amazing.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think as you're talking about the surrender experiment and then getting to this place where food is an expression of love. That somehow feels linked to me. I don't know how. It's like a feeling thing, but it's, instead of coming at food from rules, like we've been taught, it's almost like you're surrendering to the love that's the expression, that the food is the expression of.
Right.
That the focus is on that instead of on the macros, the this, the that we can get so controlled about. Yeah.
I think that we don't give ourselves enough credit. And so I think if you really are eating and you really feel good, again, the before, during, and after, right? Food should feel good to you the entire time. Like when you're thinking about it, once you have it, while you're eating it, and then when you're done, like you should just feel good about it and no rules, right? Like, and not to think about judging yourself or if other people are judging you, just kind of like throw it all out the window and just start over. You can always start over.
I love that. You can always start over. That's a great spot to wind down. And so I understand that you have a free gift for our audience. What is that?
Yes, I'm going to share one of my most popular recipes, which is for a vegan crab cake.
What? Awesome.
Yeah. So
I actually didn't know that. Cool. So great. So the link, is the link easy to say, or we'll just put it in the show notes?
It'll probably just say vegan crab cake.
Okay. Great.
And then just click it and it'll take you right to it.
Perfect. Yeah. So we'll put that link to the vegan crab cake in the show notes. And I love ending with, you can always start over. What a beautiful message. Mm-hmm. And thank you so much for being here today on Relationship Alchemy. It's really been great to talk with you.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you. So that's it for today, folks. My name is Maria Elizabeth Mali. We have been talking about the alchemy of food and relationship with Angelique Santana. And remember, until next time, a great relationship starts with you.